Hi, this is Kaulin with Covey. Today we're going to be talking about tips and tricks for fishing small flies for this skill of the month. One of my favorite things to do with new customers in our shop is to introduce them to our armada of extremely tiny flies. It's pretty crazy when you can point a fly out to somebody where you could literally fit about 9 of them on a penny. It's hard for people to believe that you can catch sizable fish or even catch really any fish on a fly like that. But you know, they can be really effective and they actually work really well in a lot of our areas, in particular around anglers' coveys. So small flies can be really effective in tailwaters. So where we fish, you know, the South Platte or the Arkansas River, it can be a really good choice to size down your flies in order to entice those trout. So a few reasons that we're going to be fishing really small flies is because we like to fish in areas that are tailwaters. So generally the aquatic insect life is just really tiny. And so that doesn't even just make us singled into midges, but it's also going to expand into some of the mayfly categories too. Around our areas we get hatches of, you know, midges constantly, but we're also going to have, you know, really small blue-wing olives. We're going to have the tricos in the summer. So in general, you know, it's pretty common for us to be fishing stuff from 18 to, you know, 24, 26 even. Another reason that we're going to fish really small flies is to give us an advantage in stealth when we're targeting really picky fish. A lot of times if we throw something, you know, in a hook size of 14, 12, larger than that, these fish are going to be spooked off, right? You know, it's going to be a little too invasive to them. It's going to be a little too loud. So what we like to do is size down those flies, give them something that they wouldn't even think twice about, and then it's going to give you that chance at hooking into, you know, maybe a really nice fish. So two categories where we're really going to focus on our small flies are going to be nymphing and dry flies. So there's tricks that are going to be unique to each of those tactics that we're going to use that are going to help you out a lot when you're fishing with these tiny flies. So starting with nymphing, here are a few strategies that are going to be helpful for rigging up in particular. One of the questions I hear constantly is, you know, how can you even possibly thread the eye of a hook at that size, right? Number one, we're going to be using really small tippets. So, you know, you're going to probably have to leave your 3X and your 4X at home. We're going to start using tippet in sizes 5X, 6X. So when threading the hook, even when we're using 5X on really small flies, it can be kind of tricky to get it through the eye of the hook. It's just a little too thick to quite fit through there. So a little trick that I learned that I like to do is I'll actually take my nippers and cut my tippet at a little bit of an angle. You see, I'm not coming on just directly, but I'm actually going to take just a slight angle there. So it's going to make that diameter of the end of that tippet a little bit thinner. That's going to allow me to at least force that entry and then pull my tippet through to create that next knot. Something else to think about when we're nymphing is going to be our indicator selection. You know, if we're trying to be really subtle to these trout and we're using small flies already, it might be helpful to size your indicator down, right? You know, this is a small Oros right here, one of my favorites. Or if you even need to get stealthier, let's say you don't have weight, you're using unbeaded nymphs and you're really trying to get to that extremely picky trout, I think something like these extra small Oros can really do the trick for you. I mean, it is virtually, I think it's the closest thing you can get to yarn as far as stealth. Rigging up with small hooks is one thing, but actually catching and landing fish is a whole nother thing when we're talking about tiny hooks. One thing to really think about here is going to be our hook set, right? You know, a lot of times traditionally, I think anglers are used to just setting up. I'm sure you've heard a lot of guides tell you just set the hook directly up. You know, with these small hooks, I find a lot of times they have a difficult time finding that fish's mouth in the right position, you know, without just missing them entirely. So what we like to do, particularly with small hooks, is if I get a strike right now, I'm going to make an effort to set downstream. You see how I'm just going right down with the current, small arm lift. That's really all that it's going to take. But what happens is that hook then is going to be directionally put right into that fish's mouth where he's looking upstream, and it's going to set a lot nicer than a set that is likely to lose if you set upstream or just directly up. Yep. Yep, good work. All right, lift his head, lift his head.
Yeah, woo!
So I actually lost my fish, but Meg was able to show me how to get it done today. And she caught this beautiful rainbow on a small fly. And some things that she did just perfectly is utilizing the drag. We had a pretty light drag on there, so it wasn't too strong of a drag to snap her light tippet, you know, her 5X that she was using. And she also had a downstream set, which was great, and I was able to land this beautiful fish. Redemption. Now let's talk about our second category, which is dry fly fishing. Dry fly fishing with small flies is going to require maybe a little bit different equipment if you really want to get the most out of your dry fly fishing. For example, this is a great opportunity maybe to look into getting that 4-weight rod or something a little bit on the lighter side, matching it with a lighter line as well. So, you know, 4-weight rod, 4-weight line, and then maybe going true to size on that line. What that's going to do is when you make those casts with your small dry flies and you go to mend, you're not just going to sink that fly right away or make it drag. You know, having a really true to weight line, which would be, in today's standards, maybe a lighter kind of line, would certainly help keep that fly on top of the water. As I continue to kind of allude to here, a lot of the problems that we find with these small flies, they just sink really quickly. If you make any kind of movement in that line, they just tend to shoot under the water. They get waterlogged very quickly. Any kind of added weight to them, they just really do not stay on top of the water. So something that we like to do, I don't love to put gink on my really small flies before I fish them. Like I said, just adds a little bit of weight, just doesn't seem to be very helpful for us. So what I actually like to use, especially with my CDC flies, is going to be using this frog's fanny. There's a small applicator brush in here, and what you'll do is just brush off the fly as it becomes waterlogged, and it actually does a pretty good job keeping that fly on top of the water throughout the day as you fish it on top of the water. Another really important piece of equipment when dry fly fishing with your tiny flies is actually going to just be sunglasses. These flies are extremely hard to see on top of the water surface, so you know, a nice set of polarized sunglasses are really going to help you track that fly as it goes down the river. So if we can keep our fly on top of the water, then really we just need to solve visual issues at that point. You know, if you have really good sight, you feel comfortable watching these size 24 flies sit on top of the water and float down the stream, that's awesome. But a lot of times it can be really hard to see, even with your polarized sunglasses, right? So one of the tactics that we like to do, and the way that I have this rigged up, is I actually have a larger fly here, just a big kind of parachute Adams there, that I'm going to be able to see pretty well on the water, right? It's gonna be subtle enough when it hits the water that it shouldn't spook the fish, but I'll be able to track that indicator on the top there. That is going to allow me to make sure that this fly, this mole fly I've got following it, the size 22, is you know, either being taken by a fish or just floating on past, right? As soon as this indicator makes any kind of movement, it's going to trigger me to set that hook, and you know, I could potentially have a fish on that mole fly. So as you're gonna see here, that first fly is a lot easier to track. I can see that visually pretty well with my eyes. That second fly, pretty tough to see. But as soon as that second fly gets hit, I'm gonna see that first fly react, that indicator fly, and that'll allow me to set the hook and hopefully have a fish on. The last visual tip I have for you for dry fly fishing is if you're having a really hard time following it, maybe you just can't even see the fly, maybe you are fishing that solo small fly, you know, shorten your leader up. It's gonna allow you to kind of track it a little bit easier. You know, you can watch your fly line, see the direction that that fly is most likely in, versus having this really long leader where when you cast, you might think your fly is in one spot, but as you'll notice when you lift that line back up, that fly could be in a completely different area. So shortening up that leader can be pretty helpful there. So a short leader is going to help you visually, but if you actually incorporate that long leader, and let's say maybe you work on your casting, you have an efficient dry fly cast at distance, then having that longer leader could really help when those trout are being extra picky, right? You know, you have a giant fly line, colored fly line land on top of the water. I think a lot of times that is going to spook that fish away. Where if you have a longer leader and you put that tiny fly on, that could be your most stealthy approach for the pickiest dry fly eating trout. Thank you for watching our video. Fishing with small flies can be challenging, but it can also be very effective. Honestly, it just takes a couple tricks and techniques to get it down, and it can be a great way to fish in areas around Angler's Covey. just tailwaters in general, any place where there's going to be really spooky fish, or, just when the need is there. So if you have any questions about fishing with small flies, please visit us at Anglers Covey in Colorado Springs, or leave a comment below on our YouTube page. We have our biggest event of the year coming up on Saturday, March 1st. It is our annual Hootenanny sales event. But we're also going to have industry representatives from all of our brands. We're going to have, our large collection of extremely small flies that you can ask about, and we're there to help you get dialed in on your small fly game. So just stop on by on Saturday. I don't think you'll regret it. And thanks for watching.